Facilities Operations Committee meeting. I want to go ahead and start with introductions, and we can start all the way on the corner on my right.
That's me. Shanice Clark, Director of Community Engagement.
Claire Hertz, Deputy Superintendent.
Marina Cresswell, Senior Director, Office of School Modernization.
Kirsten Calder, Real Estate Manager. Dana White, Director of Real Estate and Planning.
Patrick LaBeouf, Director of Projects and Construction Facilities.
Gary Hollins, Board Member and Chair.
Jonathan Garcia, our Chief of Staff.
Nora Byrne, Secretary of the Dr. Martin Elementary. Rose Boyer, Treasurer of the Dr. Martin Luther King Junior PTA.
Tyler Brown, Vice President of Platform.
Karen Bradshaw, Secretary of the Board of Education. Constant Board of Education.
You missed one.
Oh, Terry Conjure, Communications Department. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, so today we have three presentations that's coming up. We have presentation about the BNC Phase 2. We have the bond and health safety update, and then we have update on the Heria Tubman relocation. So I will turn this over to Dana.
Thank you. So I want to talk a little bit today about the Phase 2 work that we're going to be doing, looking at the possibility of relocating the operations here. And so this is an update to give you a little bit of background, because not everybody was here when Phase 1 was done, and then what we're working on for Phase 2. So why can't I make it go to the next slide? And I'm pushing the thing. Cara. Okay, I don't know. Oh, there we go. So we'll do the Phase 1 review, and then the Phase 2 project, what we're doing there, and the scenarios that we're going to look at for the evaluation for Phase 2. This is really an economic evaluation. The other evaluations have really been done, and what our findings have been to date. So let's do that. The Phase 1 overview was done in 2018, and that was prompted by an unsolicited offer of $80 million to buy the property from Trammell Crow, representing a hopefully sports franchise that could come to the city. So took a look at that. We had Cushman and Wakefield come in and do an evaluation. They had a number of stakeholder meetings. They did a lot of in-depth evaluation about what the needs are, how much space we need, how we would consider looking at this. So that was extensive, and really included department managers, district leaders, all kinds of folks to get to what the needs were for that. The study identified some key issues that would be considered in citing a future BESC. These are unchanged for Phase 2. One of the things we're doing in Phase 2 is to go back and confirm that these are still our criteria, and we have confirmed that in fact they are. Central location is key for folks. You know, Lloyd Center is actually the physical center of our district, so we're sitting very close to that, lots of access to freeways, things like that. Trying to find something where we can do warehouse and office together, certainly at least in the city core is extremely difficult, probably virtually impossible. So that's something we would need to look at bifurcating in the future. Parking is considered a material issue for folks, as is safety and security. So staff wants to be able to park, and they want it to be safe, and they want some amenities, things like that.
So Dana, is this Phase 2 all meant to be internal?
Yes.
Be an internal analysis?
Well, we have Eco Northwest is provide. I'm not sure what you mean by internal.
Well, it's like we had CBRE do some work before, and we had Eco Northwest do some work, so.
Eco Northwest is doing the Phase 2 analysis.
Okay.
Through a grant from Metro that we're sharing. Metro had a grant, and ABT has a portion of that, and we have a portion of that to kind of look at this site. Some of the findings from phase one were that there was no significant financial gain in selling the property. And that's because of what it costs to relocate us to find another space, particularly if we need to have two spaces, one for warehouse and one for office. As I said, the location is central. The cost that would likely be in the $20 to $50 million range in addition to a purchase price, assuming a purchase price of $80 million. So depending on that figure changes depending on what the purchase price would be. And the risk of finding a place that works for us is challenging. I think the office portion of that, not so difficult. It's the warehouse piece of that gets to be much more complicated. So those are the key points I wanted to make on that. You can certainly read through the rest of that. So in the phase two purpose through this grant we were just talking about is to confirm the criteria, which we have done, and then to develop a financial analysis. It's really a financial report. It's not going back to departments and saying, hey, how much space do you need and things like that. It's really saying what are the different options we might have for from a business perspective of how to manage this. So the scenarios that we're looking at with ECO are a redevelopment of potential site A, we call it, which is this site, assuming we did an office and say Tubman on this site or Center for Black Student Excellence or some other kind of academic use and put that with the BESC. What would that look like? Scenario two is what if we were to go to an office building like the Nordstrom building, which we have looked at potentially for our office. We would need to, of course, find someplace for the warehouse function. But Lloyd Center, again, is really the center of our district. Redevelopment of a conventional office building. Nordstrom's obviously not a conventional office building, but there are other office buildings around, and if we could redevelop that to meet our needs. Build a suit on a remainder parcel here. If we were to sell this and retain a few acres, what would that look like? Is that one way to perhaps thread the needle? And then finally a remodel of this building. I know nobody probably likes that idea, but in terms of we'll throw a fresh coat of paint on that salmon exterior and by golly, it'll just be fine. But one of the things we need to look at is we're weighing all of the different possibilities is what are our options. So those are the 5 scenarios that ECO is currently working through. So the phase 2 findings to date, again, is the evaluation. I'm sorry, sure, of course.
So if there wasn't some sort of pairing with an academic function, is there number 6 scenario, which is there remainder useful life in the building, or do you have to, is it really scenario 5?
Is there remainder useful life? Could we upgrade this building or to tear it down? Is that what you're asking?
Well, you can remodel, but it's sort of like, or just continue to live along. I know that's not ideal, but I'm just wondering if thinking about all the other building needs we have.
Right.
Which a lot of schools are maybe arguably in worse shape.
Sure.
Is that?
We've not asked them to model that, but that's a question we can answer with our FCA data and our maintenance data. We could say, what would we need to do to continue to operate here?
Yeah, I mean, I only asked the question in that if it makes sense to move ahead, it would seem to make sense to move ahead if it was paired with some sort of academic piece of it.
Mm-hmm.
But if it were like, we're remodeling for a host of really good reasons, the administrative building versus, and then we get into versus a school.
Sure.
I think then you get into some different trade-offs.
Right. Some forced choices. So we do know what our deficiencies are in this building and what kind of capital we would be looking at in order to sort of bring this up to some kind of reasonable standard. So that's a piece that we haven't asked ECO to do that because we have that information. Okay.
I think though the important driver there though is that we have every indication that ADT is going to be able to act on their right of first refusal or whatever their option is.
Right.
Sooner rather than later. So we need to have our ducks in a row.
Right. And that's really why this is an important study, so that the board has some information on which direction to go, if that's what folks want to do. So like I said, the criteria remain unchanged. Central location still critical. We have had an increase in our employee count from the phase 1 study. So we've added several people to this building. Now, that's FTEs that are assigned here with the potential for hybrid, that may change. We're still in sort of uncharted territory there. Obviously, parking will change if we move, and that's one of those things that is a real perk that folks are used to. And so there's some cultural shifts, I think, that would have to happen, some change management there. We do have staff in satellite locations. And so if we were to bring, this is the TOSAs and folks like that, if we were to say, okay, everybody's assigned to this location, even though that may just be a just-in-time kind of space, not an actual assigned cube, that would put us at about 746. So that's going to be a decision point that will need to get made as we move forward with these options. And then the non-administrative functions, warehouse, maintenance, nutrition services would be bifurcated, because warehouse, it would be prohibitively expensive to try to do warehouse in the city, right here in the center of the city. And it just doesn't, the land just doesn't exist. So GBD Architects is working as a subcontractor to ECO. They are also working with TriMet right now and Northwest Natural Gas. So we're getting the benefit of some of the experiences that they're going through, looking at their office spaces, and they're calculating 200 square feet per person. So you can kind of do the math on how much space we might need. And that includes conference rooms and things like that. That's a loaded.
And what's that standard based on?
The standard's based on what they're seeing in the market. So that means people have, we have about, most people in this building are in cubes. Obviously, we have offices as well, but that gives you circulation, some conference rooms, things like that. That makes sense. So that would be probably 6x6 cubes, which we're starting to use more and more of.
It seems like one thing, I don't know if the academic side has been part of this conversation, but one thing that should be included is, just as every teacher doesn't have their own dedicated classroom in our high schools now, we have a lot of people in this building who are out in schools all the time.
Right.
So that should probably be taken into consideration, that the old model of a cube per employee might not make sense anymore.
Right, you're absolutely
So
right.
not just hybrid work, but people who are based here, who are gone 3 or 4 out of 5 days.
We had a census building out several million square feet of office space. Did a census, and like some spaces and offices only get used like 15% of the time because of the travel. And that there's just with more flexible configurations and hot desks and other things like that, you actually can flex in the space, so you don't maybe need 200 square feet for somebody every day. But somebody might need a conference room for a week. I mean, say if they set up a war room or something, or they may just need a telephone booth for calls or something.
For calls, right, so. And I think that's where, as we get deeper into this, GBG's experience with TriMet and with Northwest Natural, who are both going through similar kinds of experiences, will be helpful to us, and there's a cultural shift. It's just like parking, we have some big offices here, and when we say to some of our academic folks, hey, you're not here all the time, how about we share this great big office? We're getting there, but it's definitely, that's new, and that's a change for folks, but clearly that's the way the work world is functioning, so. I agree. So the next phases, the next steps, we've kicked off the project, as I said. We've confirmed our phase 1 work. Now we are starting to work on the financial data collection and the market evaluations of what might be out there. Not so much specifically this building, number A, B, or C, but what does it look like, in terms of just the cost of renting or owning. Those are big key decisions that we will need to make. And then this summer, we'll get down to the decision matrix and final report, bring this back to you all in September, and then to the board as well. It's been vetted through this group. Does that make sense? You're looking like you're questioning, Julia.
I'm just
Yeah.
listening.
And that is it for this presentation. Wanted to just bring everybody up to speed on what's happening, because it is moving pretty quickly, and obviously ABT is working on their side of things as well. What could they put here? How would that work? And ECO is working with them as well. So while we have a firewall there, they're working as rapidly as they can so that we can all kind of come together.
Awesome. Any other questions, comments around this presentation?
Thank you.
Do we have it?
I guess one last thing, just the operating premise is whatever we do, it's not like a net, new net capital dollars that we're not going to use any bond money or anything or putting anything in a bond. It would be somehow with a revenue stream from this site.
That's what we're looking at. Can we make that work? Whether that's a ground lease situation or a sales situation, does that give us enough funding to relocate?
And who's doing that?
That's what ECO's doing.
So ECO's doing that actually.
Yes. They're doing that work.
All right, so I'll be looking forward to that presentation when it comes.
Okay.
All right, so let's go next to the bond health and safety update.
Thank you. I don't actually have a presentation per se, but we were asked to provide an update on the status of the 2017 bond health and safety dollars. The funding that was set aside for 8 categories of projects: accessibility, asbestos, fire sprinkler and alarm, lead paint, radon, roof seismic, security, and water quality. And I have provided you with a memo that essentially lays out each of those categories. There is, I think, great news to come out of this, which is the number of schools that we had anticipated doing work on for each of those categories. We have exceeded in 6 of the 8. One of the other remaining categories we don't need to exceed because the need is not there after doing further assessment. And the final category, we are still doing work, which is the asbestos category. So the way the memo is laid out is essentially each category has its own section. You should be able to find in that section the language within the bond measure that says what we were going to do. It will lay out the scope of the work that we have completed or are completing and sort of the status of where we are in completing that work. There's also a financial section to look at that will track the funds that were set aside for each of those categories and where we are with spending those funds. As it stands right now, we have, we do actually anticipate that we will have a decent chunk of funding remaining in the water quality set aside that we don't need to use for water quality specifically. And we will be looking at other health and safety categories on which to use that funding. We do have quite a bit of need within the roof replacement area. And there is always room for more work with accessibility and asbestos as well. So that's basically it. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer questions, but it's mostly just a lot of information for you to take in when you can.
So, sorry, can I ask a question, Gary? So the 150 million, it looks like the vast majority of the money that's left from the 2017 bond is the water quality.
That is correct.
And the innovative solution is gonna get everything down to 1 pp.
Part per billion? Yeah. So our initial, when we first started out with the water quality program, we were simply attempting to meet the state requirement of less than 15 parts per billion of lead in water. We were able to develop a very innovative system using filters that allows us to bring all drinking water sources down to less than 1 part per billion. We're in the process of implementing that right now. We had hoped to have that implemented last year. There were significant supply chain issues with the water fixtures themselves. So we are still implementing that in the schools, and we're fairly well through. We're in a lot of different sites right now and doing a lot of like small finishing touches in a lot of sites. And then we have other sites that are still moving forward. We are doing repeated testing on those fixtures after we have installed them. And I believe we've tested over 650 fixtures so far. What we're finding is that we are doing really well with the drinking water stations. Some of our specialty fixtures and our kitchen fixtures, we are testing maybe closer to 2 parts per billion. So still significantly less than the state standard, but we'd like to get it down to less than 1. And so we're looking at some options to address that. We'll be implementing pilot program essentially this summer to see if we can't get those fixtures down to less as well.
So, I'm sorry.
I was just gonna follow on that with all the money almost expended. I'm wondering, there was the bond audit like 2 years ago, talked about the need for an interactive map. And I'm just wondering, so this is, I think, really useful information for our parent community about an issue that people were pretty concerned about. Do we have that interactive map that people could say, look at Lane, Marysville, or Roseway Heights, or Vernon, and be able to see, like, hey, radon mitigation happened here, or roof repair happened here, or...
We do. Thank you for asking. On the school improvement bond web page on PPS's website, on the main page, there is an interactive map. It can sometimes be hard to see with all the things on the page, but if you look under the big picture at the top, on the right side, there's a map there. You click on that. That is interactive. You can choose your school, and it will tell you which projects we have completed on your school by bond measure as well. It won't get into the specific scope details of each of those projects, but it will tell you which projects have touched the school. Each of our different categories of health and safety have their own web page. We have within the menu on the left-hand side, you can go to see 2017 health and safety. If you click on that page, it's kind of a splash page for all of the health and safety. And you should see each of the different categories that you can click and go further. Within the memo, I've provided information web addresses for each of those sites so that you can go find more information about specific scope of work.
Okay, so.
Hey,
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, Jonathan, we would be great to make sure that Freddie sees this and that we, blast it out a little bit more than just through the bond webpage, which people have to go out of their way to find. And I was just talking with Roseanne about it. She said she thought there might be some kind of parent communication. But this is a good moment in time to just get this information out, rather than make it available to people who are already looking for it.
And we actually have, we are working with communications to develop a flyer, if you will, or an update that can go back to the community. So we've prepared something and they're looking at it, and we hope to have that out soon.
So walk me through that process again, and I'm on the website. How do I go and look at that?
So if you're on our webpage, do you want the interactive map or the individual web pages?
Interactive map.
So on the interactive map, if you're on the main page, if you look to the right-hand side, you see what looks like a dark square. I'm blind here.
So first we need to go to the conferences. We'll go to school on litigation. Yeah. That might be it. Yeah. Okay, so this is how it comes.
Can I ask a
And the reason why I did it, because this is the issue that I think a lot of people have been able to navigate to get this
This
information.
is the school building improvement.
Marina,
fund.
can you speak to the
And then here's.
2020 HVAC upgrades, or is that somebody else?
I can speak to that.
Bond, school.
I'm not sure, what are you looking to hear
What?
specifically?
It says there's $75 million in HVAC upgrades in the 2020 bond that are gonna be launched. I'm just wondering how many schools that.
Okay.
So,
Hey, just one second, before we go there, just back to 2017, I wanted to ask, what was that $10 million of accessibility improvements under
there's actually-
2017?
that is one of the, conveniently, we did provide more specific information on the scope by site.
Okay,
In the memo, but it's a combination of things. We did install elevators at some schools, but it also includes things like ramps, accessible restrooms, door hardware, main entry accessibility. It's a variety of different things, and you can find more detailed scope of that also on the website per site.
It's on page 4, is that?
It is on
it's
page 4.
outlined?
Yeah.
Did you get the same?
yeah.
And then as far as the 2020 scope of work, we are going to be coming back to the Facilities and Operations Committee to talk about project selection prioritization criteria for each of the different scopes of work. We have moved forward with some of the, what we call the low-hanging fruit, or what we would consider urgent situations. We are currently working on design for 3 sites for full system replacement, and we have a 4th site that will occur as well in combination with other work. That's Harrison Park. And then the remainder of the funding, we are looking to do upgrades across potentially 80 plus sites so that we can ensure that we are touching as many schools as possible to upgrade their heating, ventilation, and air conditioning.
So those would be like HVAC upgrades versus like whole system replacements. It's a little bit hard for me to hear because ironically.
So we have some sites that truly need full system replacements. Those are incredibly expensive to do. And the money that we have set aside is not going to allow us to do that at a large number of sites. And so what we're doing is we're addressing those sites that are critical with full system replacements. And at this point, there are 4 sites that are in that mix. And then the remainder of the funding, we are looking at how we apply that across the district to multiple schools to ensure that we are getting as much benefit to as many sites as we possibly can. And so we have some ideas. We are working with a consultant to refine those ideas.
And is it like the elevators where there's a planning year and then implementation year, or is it, can you bid it and do it during summer?
So if you do a full system replacement, those are particularly challenging for mechanical systems. And in fact, it's not only can we not design and bid in a short amount of time, we may not actually be able to install in a short amount of time either. And so that is one of the.
But that was quite a feat.
Yeah, it's a significant challenge.
No holds barred.
Yeah.
That was a feat.
That was
So-
me.
The design right now is moving forward. We would not do construction for those 4 sites until next summer. So not this one, but the following summer. And it would likely be a 2-summer minimum, right? So it's probably more like a 2-summer plus sometime during the school year, depending on how we can do it without impacting students. So that is one of the things that we're working through right now.
All right. Any other questions, comments?
Let's just tell the world.
All right.
Well, I guess the last thing is the 80 plus sites, the upgrades, are those like a much more, you can go in and do it during the summer?
Yes, that's the intent.
Okay.
We attempt to do as much work during non-occupied periods as we possibly can. It does no good for us to be impacting students when they're trying to learn.
Okay, all right, so let's go to the next presentation for the Heria Tubman relocation update.
Okay, so I know,
And that'll be
that's
Dan.
that's Dan, but I've gotta get it, now I've got it up on screen.
And
Yeah, I'm gonna, can people hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, I'm gonna kick this one off. We're gonna do a team effort, but I'll let Dana figure out all the technology first.
Well, I'm working on it. Why can't I'm giving it to Jonathan. Fix that.
There we go.
Get him on there, right there. I just did a presentation.
Yeah, it did work great before.
I know. I panic whenever I have to do this stuff. There we go.
There we go.
Thank you. God.
All right, I think we could just jump ahead a couple real quick. I'll just go ahead and jump right in. And then I think just one more. There we go. So this is just a quick recap of the effort to date. So as everyone probably recalls, we began when looking for a new site for relocation site for Tubman. The property search by looking for sites with just a few simple criteria. One, we're looking for sites within the existing Tubman catchment area to minimize relocation disruption to students and staff and families. Two, we're looking for a large enough site to accommodate a comprehensive middle school space and facility needs. And then three, we're looking for a site that would be available and to develop in time to meet our target schedule. And as we've discussed, and I think everyone's very much aware, no site did we find that met that criteria. Therefore, our subsequent efforts have focused on expanding the search criteria, listening to creative ideas that have come from a number of different people and groups and stakeholders, and carefully considering what the potential trade-offs would be at each of those sites. And I think kind of like a big point, what we want to land today is what we've learned is that as the relocation options have become more complex and more unique, I would say, we've needed more time to adequately assess those properties, to understand the facility constraints and the potential trade-offs that those might create, and in some cases negotiate with the current property owners. So we're still very much in the middle of that process, and we'll talk about next steps here in just a minute. Next slide, please. As we've sort of expanded the search and we've looked to be open to new ideas, and we've heard some really great ideas and some really creative options. But we also wanted to set some guardrails and thought it would be worthwhile today to just kind of clearly name some of those parameters, and something that we'll probably call out real clearly in the next version of the due diligence document. So I'm just going to read these real quick, and I don't think there's any big surprises here, but if there are, I just want people to raise their hand. The Tubman relocation process will not displace any existing K-5 school. Tubman will not be combined with an elementary school and converted to a K-8. The Tubman relocation process will not alter existing feeder school patterns. The Tubman relocation process will not alter Jefferson's program or enrollment. That's a question that comes up fairly regularly. And then Tubman will continue to be a comprehensive middle school. So those are just some kind of statements or grounding statements that we've been operating under. Next slide, please. And I think I'm going to hand over to Patrick.
All right. So this slide is just a visual representation of the construction schedule of ODOT. The orange line and the yellow lines represent the wall construction, which is happening over the summer periods when the school is not occupied. And then the blue line represents the freeway widening, or the viaduct, as they like to call it. The big thing here is this was our original schedule. We based our schedule around ODOT's construction starting in the summer of 2027 to widen the viaduct. So you can go to the next slide. This is essentially just what we were just looking at, just in a different format. The green represents ODOT's construction schedule. Oh, there we go. There we go.
I did not do it.
Okay.
I just look like.
You can see the top, that's ODOT's construction periods, and then the bottom part is our schedule to have a permanent site constructed and ready to go before the viaduct widening starts in the summer of 2027. Next slide. And just a big red flashing circle to emphasize that May was our goal to have a final site selection decision made by. I think that's a little redundant. We can go to the next one. I just missed it. So this, the top is our original schedule with ODOT's work, of course, in green, is juxtapositioned with the updated schedule from ODOT. So essentially, ODOT has accelerated their construction of the viaduct 1 year. So now it's going to start in the summer of 2026. The construction schedule for the permanent site was already constrained to begin with. And now we're clearly in the middle of construction of the new site, if everything goes as planned, when the viaduct starts being widened in 2026. So this opens the question of and the need for, now it looks like a swing site for Tubman students to move into. Next slide. And then we've been meeting with ODOT with their project team for months, attending those meetings just to listen. And then we've had a couple of meetings with them asking technical questions with the concerns that we've raised for the Tubman site around noise, air, vibration, traffic. ODOT's responded to us, but has really declined to provide any specific information to address our concerns that's going to impact the site. And then, so our determination is that, it's going to be material and consequential of this work happening next to the Tubman site. So I think that's all I've got. I have a very good segue to the next one.
It's me.
Okay.
So, as a result of community feedback, we really are connecting the Tubman relocation process with the Center for Black Student Excellence and Jefferson Modernization. And so, as we anticipate future meetings that will resume in June, we really are in the middle of engagement and have heard some themes. And we are connecting a number of communities, the feeder schools for Tubman and Jefferson, and partners and leaders across the community are essential folks that we both have made touch points with and will be continuing to. But there's some themes here, and we're hearing that the school needs to be in the catchment area, and that's been a strong feedback we've heard from folks that include staff, families, and folks in our community. And also a lot of the sites, folks are curious about what implications that might mean for busing, depending on our current viable sites. So there's definitely an interest in avoiding that and really wanting more information about what busing implications could look like. Also, knowing that some of these sites are in commercial areas are not necessarily desirable, and folks are curious about just hearing more about the trade-offs of a school in a residential area versus a school in a commercial area. And also, as we explore potential options that might be close in proximity to schools like Jefferson or others, there's definitely concerns around what that might mean to have students, especially a wide age range of students near each other, and other issues that have kind of came up in similar formats or similar school structures. So that's just some highlights of themes that we've heard, and know that we're really continuing, especially to hold space with students and families at Tubman, and we'll hope to especially continue this in a joint fashion with the Center for Black Student Excellence.
So I have a question about that, and it's more just technical. So it says that it'll be a joint process between the Jefferson Modernization and the Center for Black Student Excellence.
Yeah, so
Is it actually supposed to be the Center for Black Excellence? Because otherwise, it's like we're gonna be partnering with ourselves.
So I could go to the next, if we can go to the next slide and I'll address, I think, a little bit of that issue there. So first of all, I want to appreciate, the PTA, Dr. King PTA, and the number of parents that have that have engaged in this conversation, and we've received, letters and your thoughts about the direction. We're also, as you all know, engaging with our nonprofit community leaders through the CBE, through the Center for Black Excellence, and through that, and at the same time, there's a conversation or there's work moving forward around the Jefferson over Jefferson High School. So we have three major projects in the Albina neighborhood, and part of the question as we're getting closer to deciding a site for the future Heria Tubman is that we're going to have to start talking about trade-offs, right? We're going to have to talk about trade-offs in the sense of, as we narrow the site selection, the sites, one that has come up is a site just south of Jefferson. That has a lot of implications for the Jefferson build, just as it has implications for Tubman. And some trade-offs, given the site is small, for example, and, given that condition, there are some things that we have to talk about. So what we're proposing, and we shared this with Director Hollins, is an opportunity to reset our stakeholder engagement and have co-shared meetings between the stakeholders involved in the relocation of Tubman, stakeholders connected to the Jefferson master planning, and obviously our folks, our community leaders at the CBE. By engaging and doing that in a joint venture, our effort is to one, stop. I think there are a lot of conversations that we're having in silos, so really bringing those conversations to the forefront. Given what our operational team just talked about in terms of the deadlines, with ODOT shifting, we wanted to also align all of these conversations closer together. So what we know is that the school board is scheduled to vote on the master plan for Jefferson in October. And so in alignment with that, we want to also have you consider and vote on the Tubman site selection in October. So then that gives us, again, it's about 6 months or so to really go into some of this trade-off conversation in a collective fashion again, impacting all of Albina schools. So what you have in front of you is kind of a high-level schedule of what that looks like, with regular check-ins, obviously with this body, and engagement throughout. So right now we are drafting the plan, if you will, share it with a number of folks to see their interest, if it piques their interest. But again, the real opportunity here is to bring all the different voices and stakeholders into the conversation so that we can properly discuss, what is in the best interest of students in the Albina schools. So does that answer your question, Julia?
It does. It's just the way it was presented.
Yeah, and I actually want to make a note. So we have been
It's
meeting with.
confusing.
Yeah, so we had a aha moment the other day, and I think Director Hollins was there with some of these, with our leaders. The Center for Black Student Excellence is Center for Black Excellence. And it's going to go, I know. And we're going to have to clarify that as a broader community, but that became clear for us 2 days ago.
Yeah, it'll get clear as we move forward on that whole piece. But the one thing I wanted to bring up too, and we just talked about this, as far as the right to return piece. So we want to make sure that with what we're doing with Tubman, and even like Boise, as far as, we know the displacement stuff that happened, over years and decades in the Albina neighborhood. So we want to make sure that when we're talking about the relocation, for here in Tubman, we're also including the right to return piece as well. That is one of the big things for our community is that came out is we want to make sure our kids will be able to have the accessibility and access back to what we're going to be doing, in the Albina neighborhood. So I wanted to make sure we put that in here, that the right to return piece is something that we're working on. We actually got some great feedback from Courtney about that, and we might have some workarounds that can make that path a lot easier than the current path that it takes to get there now. And so we're hoping to hear something like that in the next intergovernmental meeting as far as that goes, and that'll be something that we come to the board as well as that workaround to make that path easier for the right to return.
In terms of interdistrict transfers.
Yeah, so the memo that came down from the state, so the state has been working with PPS on this topic. Obviously, this has been a particular issue with some of our Black elders and Black leaders in the community who have lifted this up. And so we, as a school district, have continued to engage the state on the topic because it's really important.
There's a memo on for the committee meeting today.
Yep. Yeah. That's a kind of summarization of that. Basically, state just said, basically y'all figure it out. And so that's what we're going to do. We'll figure it out and then get it done and then deal with the other stuff later.
Much better than the alternative, which is we'll figure it out for you.
Right. All right, so we have some, I do want to get a public comment before we get into questions, because I want to be able to hear if they have questions as well, so we can answer them all at the same time. So, do you have any public comments?
Okay, we have Tyler Brown. Yes, you'll get this, your name is still out in the version.
My name is Tyler Brown, I'm the new head and PTA Vice President at Dr. Ronald King Elementary. I attended both Dr. Ronald King Elementary and Heria Middle School. I also currently work at Jefferson High School. Children will continue their education in the Mandarin immersion program at these schools. Our community has tried to participate in PPS community engagement programs, but it's been a struggle. Meetings are poorly planned, share little new information in our more like lectures than conversations. This hasn't helped rebuild the trust that PPS destroyed when staff was clearly targeting our building for the new Tubman location. We've been talking to the community both within our school and beyond. Not one member of our community supports the location in ECS. Based on the conversations we've had, we believe that the location adjacent to Jefferson High School is the best option for Tubman Center. It will keep Tubman within the Albina neighborhood, and having Tubman and Jefferson close to each other will create opportunities for coordination through investment in the center like this. We know what's best for the community, but we're concerned about PPS's ability to deliver. We've been through years of discussions about closing our schools, flip-flopping on the future of our Mandarin program, and choking off our cash flows. It's important for the community to be able to hold PPS staff accountable. With that in mind, we ask the board to insist on the following conditions. 1, any revenue from the sale or lease of the current Tubman site must be directed back into the long-term support of the new Tubman Jefferson community and the Center of Public Excellence. Tubman and Jefferson must not be housed together in a shared building. The schools must be organized to protect middle schoolers from the influence of other students. Tubman must remain a neighborhood middle school, while also allowing Albina families who have been displaced by gentrification to transfer in. As the only ELI program with significant participation of Black PPS students, the Albina Mandarin immersion program must remain in Albina neighborhood schools. PPS must commit to transparent outcomes-based decision-making regarding curriculum program and other structural elements of both schools. PTA boards for both schools must meet with the superintendent twice annually, and the site councils for both schools must be fully supported. The district and school administrators must clearly describe their benchmarks for students and school success. They must report annually to the school communities, performance related to those benchmarks, and their plans to address any shortfalls. The PPS district teams leading curriculum and program development must study and learn from other relevant examples of co-located middle school and high school facilities. The success of the Center of Black Excellence is also a critical component of this city decision. In order to ensure its success, PPS must commit to funding the Center of Black Excellence for at least 10 years after its launch, including representative of PTAs of the historically Black schools and governance of the center, being transparent about CBE's goals and how its success will be measured, and incorporating the Alabama Mandarin Immersion Program, which spans Alabama Head Start to graduation in the center's work. We know this is a lot of information. We've shared a more detailed version of the writing and board members, and with the board members and PPS staff leading this process. But we have received no response at all from PPS staff. We look forward to working with the board to make sure PPS delivers on its promises they made to legislation and the governor when they asked for $120 million to relocate Tubman. They said they wanted to serve our community with that money to right past wrongs. We want that too. And we're determined to hold PPS accountable.
Do we have that letter as well?
Yeah, she sent it.
Thank you, Teresa. Heria?
Yes.
Yeah.
On it.
Okay.
It's not going out.
Okay, yeah, sorry.
Any more comments?
I would love to know what locations are being considered and looked at for version 3. It's been at least 2 months since we've had any new information, and we are trying very hard to stay engaged, and it is getting frustrating, to say the least. Clearly, there are thoughts happening and ideas thrown around, and we would love, and this is a great opportunity for it to be shared publicly as well.
Any other comments? Okay.
Well, I can jump in if that's okay. So we're currently developing the due diligence document, volume 3. The intent of the due diligence document and when it gets shared publicly. So everyone gets the same information at the same time. And we have been working on it, for several weeks now. It's taking a little bit longer. And it's just because we've needed that time to do the additional analysis. We don't want to put something out that is only partially baked. We want to be able to provide the best information that we can. So we anticipate that will be out in the next couple of weeks. That goes out publicly, that goes out to the board, and it's available for everyone at the same time. And as you notice on that last slide, we're trying to follow a sequence of issuing information that is available for everyone to review and analyze, have community engagement meetings, and then have the board meetings. So everyone is able to see the same information, have discussion around it. And then when the board gets together, they can have discussion around both the detailed information and also the community input. So we're going to trying to follow that same sequence every month.
So will the due diligence, will the due diligence version 3 documents, you said that they'll be shared publicly, are they going to be shared at the next facilities and operations meeting, or how does it actually get shared publicly and sent out to the board?
They get shared with the board. They get put on the website for all of our facilities meetings, and then certainly we can make them available at all of our engagement sessions as well. I'm not sure if Jonathan's still there. I know that Jonathan and Shanice and team are working on setting up a website, so all the documents can go to one place. So there's just a common repository for all the information.
And
I guess I'm wondering about the trigger though. So like something goes up on the website, but how do I know that it's there?
Are we checking the website every day and hopes that the due diligence report?
Is there going to be an email out to all of the community members?
Yeah, I think what the intent is, so there's multiple groups. So for the board and the board committee, information goes out to there. And I don't know if Shanice, if we've identified that trigger of when we have the different stakeholder groups, how that notification goes to them. That's certainly something we can do. I don't know if that's, maybe something that's still in development to be routine and clear.
Well, for sure, we can take your names down today and make sure when it does come out that we email it to you.
I understand that, but I think the broader problem is that it's not, Dan just said that it's really important that it goes out to everybody at once. We're not special. We just happen to be here tonight, right? There's no reason why we should get information before anyone else. You have email addresses for all of the feeder schools, for Tubman and for Jefferson. Why not just send it out to all of those communities as soon as it's released?
So I guess that's a question. Can we do that?
Of course we can do that. And
Okay.
what I don't want to do is speak for the community engagement team. And so, I hear there's a high level interest, and we certainly want to be responsive to your request. Okay?
And I think too, when we talk about resetting, this is one of the reasons why we decided to reset. Because we wanted to make sure we are encapsulating everyone, and things change, right? So the timeline changed for ODOT, which that's a whole different reason, but they changed for ODOT. So we have to look at, well, if it's going to change, how do we protect our kids? And what does that mean by us doing the engagement piece correctly and the right way? Well, now that means we have to look at another site, a satellite site. In the meantime, swing site, right? So now we have to go back and look at, okay, well, what did that look like at the same time, right? Because they changed their stuff. We're looking at how do we take care of our kids first? And so now we're looking at, okay, now we got to add in, well, we were going to do a swing site. What did that look like? So when we're doing all that stuff, that's why we added these extra extended time to actually engage every group. One of the big things, like you talked about, as far as instead of us having these separate conversations about the Albina corridor, that's what I'm calling it, our goal is to have these conversations with everyone at the same time. So we can add, the center of like excellence in that conversation. We can look at the center of the modernization piece at the same time. We can talk to our other CBOs that's directly affecting our kids or having impact on our kids to say, hey, you guys, let's get all at the same table, right? Let's get all at the same table. Let's see how we can make this work for the whole community, right? For the whole Albina community, because that's essentially what it is, right? When I look at the Albina neighborhood piece, we'll be looking from here all the way up to Killington, right? That's kind of what we're looking at. So we're looking at putting everyone together and how do we make all these pieces fit as opposed to doing these being silo conversations. And so that's why, some of the communication haven't been out. We're trying to figure out how do we put that together? How do we make sure that everybody gets the information at the same time? And so we have to have a little patience with that because those other things come up. We're trying to adjust. So we don't want to get about information today with something here, and then next week we find out something different, and then we have to recirculate and do that all over again because then it gets confusing. So just ask for a little bit of patience on that. But we are hearing you guys, and that's why, like I said, we decided to just take a step back, move our timeline for engagement, with everyone, to try to make sure we do this the right way, moving forward. And those are great questions, and I'm glad that I think what everyone is saying is that the spot south of Jefferson is that's what everyone is saying. So we're trying to see, okay, outside of the other places that might be out there in catchment area or somewhere else, how do we make all that work with all those groups? Right? And so that's kind of what we're looking at. And making sure we're looking at, the right to return pieces and putting all those things in the whole packet, versus just these things is parcel out. So that's kind of how we're trying to look at everything and wrap everything together.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
I think that's really, really important.
We've been working, talking a lot with the Black Excellence Steering Committee as well. And yes,
Yep.
I think that it's absolutely critical that all of the stakeholders get together and have an opportunity to talk.
Yeah.
Provide input. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, but this is the community's theme right now, and that's what we're trying to keep it going. By bringing all the communities together, I think we're going to have a more robust engagement, ideas and thought processes to make this thing happen for the community that should have on top of it. We're working on it. We're working on it.
I just want to also emphasize the importance of that communication piece. Like we see tonight in this meeting where Director Hollins, you had trouble finding something on the PBS website. we all do. It's hard, and I totally appreciate the wealth of information that you all are trafficking in all the time, and that it is hard, so hard. That said, our communities deserve to have access to this information. It should be handed to them directly. They should not need to go into the labyrinth of the PBS website in order to find this information that we've been waiting now for months for. So it would really help our community and communities like ours if there were a way for that information to be sent directly to us. Of course, we can't guarantee everyone will click on the links, we can't guarantee everybody will open it, but even just making that information that directly affects all of those families directly available to them, I think would go a very long way in increasing engagement and being an example of successful outreach and in bringing the information to the research. So,
Otherwise, we end up distributing the information, right? Which we will do, of course, we will do that.
But that's part of it too, though, right? You know, and that's one thing that I will talk about the last community meeting is that we need to rely on our community to help just, get that information out. Because we're not going to hit everybody that needs to be hit. So it's a combination of both, right? It's right? How do we get that information to you guys to get it out, and at the same time, us trying to get it out as well, right? We have to look at our partners like SEI. We have to look at, those partners to say, okay, you guys have a network of folks. You guys can do this too. So it has to be a collaborative effort at the same time,
Definitely.
Yeah.
And I think we've demonstrated just.
You guys do it. No, I'm not saying you're not. Yeah, right. I got you. Yeah, I'm not saying you're not. I'm just saying, but that's what it's going to take. It's going to take that collaborative effort to get that word out. Because everybody's not going to have access to the computer in order to go in there. Everybody's going to be able to navigate the computer to go there. Everybody's not going to have to come over here and show them, hey, let me show you how you do it, right? And so that's where it's going to really take all of us to really make sure that as you guys get information, you're getting it out. As we're trying to get it out to many people as we can, that we make sure that and other partners are getting it out. And that's one of the reasons why we're looking at getting it out to everybody at the same time. So that way everybody can start, doing that at the same time. But I do agree, with one of the things that we're trying to work on is that communication piece, and making sure that that is a clear communication and getting it out to as many people as we can. And on the other side of that, we got to have more community engagement and involvement as well, right? When we're talking to people, we know there's meetings coming up. I want to see those folks, right? I see you guys all the time, which is great, right? But there's other, and this is going out to the other PTAs and stuff too. Hey, we want everyone's input. They should be coming to these meetings too. This is going to affect them. Other communities, and you can be online. There's multiple ways that you can participate, even emails, right? We get emails from you guys all the time. I get it, right? But it shouldn't be just you guys' emails that we're getting, right? It should be everyone that is commenting and doing that. So it's going to be an effort on both parts that is going to make this. This is a once in a lifetime, in my lifetime, opportunity for us to literally, have access or control or input in $500 million worth of investment in our community, and we have to have everyone here to do that. And if the ones that's not here just don't be here, then the ones that's here is the ones who are going to get that input. And then we're going to have that same mindset, well, they're not connecting with us, yada, yada, right? A lot of people I know knows about what's going on. But we got to get them here at the table to talk, to have their input, to have their thought process, because there's some ideas that we just might not be thinking about. But we got to have them here as well as us, making sure we get the stuff out. And so one of the things that I thought we'd do is, at least for this committee, we'll make sure that we have the calendar out for the next 6 months of when we're going to have this meeting here. And then like some of the stakeholder meetings, some of those are, groups of different meetings, but trying to get this calendar out to other folks so they can be involved with more. I want to hear from everyone. Awesome.
If I may, I know it was also mentioned we have a few more weeks till this next updated report, and I think once we're working to kind of complete that information, it will really be helpful as we connect the overall work with the Center for Black Student Excellence and the Jefferson Modernization, and I do believe having not having folks assume that they'll come to us, but meeting folks where they are is going to be really critical. And so I know a part of this work in between time, we're just holding space to hear concerns and issues that folks want to elevate and know that it's also important to grapple with new information with folks who are involved, like our site committee members, like folks like you all. So I think we'll be able to be in that place where we can contend with new information in the next in June, and so we'll definitely be able to share that with school communities.
I would just like to make one more statement. It's really unfortunate that community engagement is now all of a sudden getting figured out this close to summer when you're not going to be able to meet people where they're at. You're not going to be able to go to schools and meet people because they're not going to be at the schools. It's so much harder to get anybody involved during summer. I know I am, clearly hyper involved, and I was really looking for this process being over. I wish we were done. I wish that right now we were making that decision, because I want to turn off for a little while. I want a break too. I know that most of our families and the families that we really do, that you really need to hear from and connect with, aren't going to be around after June 10th.
I don't think the plan is to do that. I think when folks start to come back around in August, we want to hold some space that continues. But in June, really, will be, I think, the next space that we will really be looking to try to build connections with the feeder schools and Tubman overall. But I agree that the summer's not going to work, so we're going to have to make sure we are kind of planning spaces when families are going to be here. And we have after the summer. I know Jonathan kind of mentioned that October is a time right now that we're hoping to have a decision.
I mean, that does mean that you have 2 months, maybe of engagement. Probably really 1 month in September is a horrendous month, right, for engagement.
I think you're raising some really good points. One thing that I just think we should acknowledge because the original timeline was sort of a standalone Tubman decision, and integrating it in the Jefferson project. I don't know if you were at the meeting when finally everybody was around the table. To integrate it correctly, instead of just being a bolt-on, I think will take that amount of time.
Yeah.
And like I said, I totally get your point. I think it's a really valid reason. I appreciate you raising it, because we need to build that into the timeline. I just think it's worth acknowledging that actually the longer timeline should make for a better integration. If we do it right, versus, hey, we're gonna plan Tubman, and then, by the way, at a certain point, we're just gonna throw it together with Jefferson. So hopefully the end product will take longer, and we'll need to be mindful of parents and family schedules, that it results in a much more integrated project.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I think, for sure.
Yeah, but I think what Rosie, I think what Rosie's saying is that if we're not doing community outreach over summer, which we all agree is not a great idea, the due diligence report won't be released until the beginning of June, then school gets out June 10th. We've got 1 week in June for community outreach, and then we've got the month of September where it's chaos and school is starting, and then a decision in October. So that leaves us with not very much time for outreach or engagement.
We just gotta do a real good job. I mean, that's just, what it is. We gotta do a good job in those 2 months to get that communication. But the thing is, we will be having other meetings, with stakeholder meetings and stuff. So those are meetings that people can attend as well. You can attend and listen in and see what's going on throughout the summer. So it's not just, you know, the going to the school piece is other opportunities where folks can chime in and email in and like I said, hopefully we're getting that information out from those stakeholder meetings. Hey, here's what's happening at these stakeholder meetings, what they're saying, and still be able to get input. So it don't have to be all or nothing. It could be more, okay, this is what's happening and how we're progressing. And we like, you know, we like people input, you know, whether it be email or, you know, however they want to.
True, but I think we are missing the, to Shanice's point about meeting people where they are.
Oh, yeah.
It's way harder to do it.
Yeah, no, I agree. Oh, no, I'm not disagreeing. I'm just saying, you know, that's what it is, so we just gotta, you know, deal with that.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So I have another question. We're back to the slide that just says questions.
We got 8 minutes.
8 minutes, okay. And this is going back to the state moving their timeline. Because the timeline on page 9, I see at the bottom half of the page, the updated construction schedule. But is that for the new timeline, or is
That's
that?
just for the ODOT work. Yeah, it's the same schedule as before for our piece of it for the permanent home. We haven't updated that yet.
I'm sorry, the top half is what?
The top half is the original schedule
And
for ODOT and us. And then the bottom slide is updated construction schedule for ODOT in the green, and that it's the same as above in the blue. So we haven't changed.
Okay, so the bottom half is, if the bottom half of the bottom half, is us with the new ODOT schedule, wouldn't we have, what I thought I heard you say is that we're gonna need a bridge site?
Swing site, yeah.
Yeah, wouldn't we wanna have that represented on here? So
Yeah, that's kind of what we're working on right now.
Okay.
Yep.
That's gonna be a whole new concept for the community.
Yep.
So I think anytime we do anything for, like any sort of schematic that includes it, that we just, at least some sort of, until you get all the details worked out, at least some like placeholder that, hey, we have a gap.
Yeah.
And, you know, it is what it is because of ODOT, but that,
Yeah.
but I don't want people thinking it's like, hey, you never told us there was gonna be this middle piece.
Right.
So the more that we can
Yeah.
share it out and have it be really explicit.
Yeah. If we could go back, we could have a big star right there, swing site at the very bottom somewhere.
Okay, well, the next
Yeah.
iteration.
Yeah.
Big star.
Gotcha. Got that.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
We're writing down.
All right. Yeah.
I have one last question.
Yeah.
Because I think that-
You got it. You got 6 minutes. You're on a roll.
And this is like, and maybe this is not, it's probably not for people in this room, but I don't know who it is the Mandarin articulation in the Jefferson cluster to Jefferson? I definitely asked that if I can find out. Yeah, because what I thought.
That's a program that you guys, we want to talk to, like, I want to talk to partners about.
Right. Okay, well.
That ain't our purview. That's a program.
It would be great as just thinking about the overall plan, sort of articulation that if that's at Jefferson or how that's gonna work.
I hear you, that's not our purview. No, so, we only got, we got 5 minutes.
I can't talk about like a non-facility.
No, you guys can talk about that after the meeting. Yeah, definitely, yeah.
Well, the only reason I ask is whether there are any implications from a facility standpoint.
Part of like, we're gonna build additional classroom or?
I don't know.
I don't know if that programming is a pertinent information as far as how the facility is built or where the facility is at. That's
I guess I just have a wondering.
Yeah, and I get it. And well, then you're gonna make sure you get her to the person who needs to answer that, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
The second person's asking today, so.
Awesome. All right, we got 4 more minutes.
Oh, yeah. I can't remember what it was.
Awesome. Anybody else got any questions, comments, thoughts? Got 4 minutes. All right, well, hearing none, we will adjourn. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.